from that organisation is the one that they need. It's unlikely that, and I can't again really state this categorically, it's unlikely that they're going to split funding, a couple of ways, sort of thing. So make one entity responsible for that, essentially. Yeah, and I do know of organisations in other jurisdictions where a separate entity is formed as that consortium, with its own bank account, with its own details, and how they distribute it later, of course, it's up to them how to do that. So you've just got to think about the structure of doing that and what makes sense. The main thing is that if that's something you want to think about, it's got to make sense when your submission is in. That's all. Particularly that financial data that's there. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much for being here. Hopefully you've got a good idea. So you've got the takeaways, but one more thing before I go, I'm going to read you the handy hints. So, firstly, read the tender scope and questions carefully and answer using clear and concise language. So it's not about how many pages do I write, it's about does your answer make perfect sense. Make notes on the key issues to consider in preparing the content of your tender response. And again, as I said earlier, I have my working draft. Do whatever you need to do on that, but it might be different to the thing that I actually upload later on. Ensure all the...
Sorry, do they prefer essays or do they prefer bullet points? How should it be structured?
Well, I think it's up to you how you do it. The waffle is never any good, so the point is nice clear paragraphs is the way I would do it. That's what I teach my students at uni as well. Clear paragraphs, each paragraph has a separate topic, and you can use bullet points within that if you wanted to, if that makes it easier for you. But always think in terms of someone assessing your response. Would I be happy with this response? And as I'll say later, because I'll talk about proofreading, get someone with fresh eyes to look over it. And if they say, what do you mean, Paul, isn't it? What do you mean, Paul? That doesn't make sense to me. And you'll explain it. But, sometimes someone else can have a better way of looking at that. So, yeah. So I don't think there's any hard and fast way. There's no word limit. There's no number of pages. It's just got to make sense and logical.
Dot points, are they bad?
I think dot points are okay as long as they provide the story, because the temptation is to shorten everything like into SMS language, and of course it doesn't always make sense. So just be careful. Yeah. Ensure all the elements of the tender are completed as requested and provided online. So for example, the budget template, only the information that's specifically requested. Do not change things outside the scope. The key is in reading the scope, understanding it, and providing a suitable response to the question. Provide clear and concise responses, and of course it comes up a lot. Don't be tempted to provide more than what is required. If you're not clear on something, ask a question via TenderLink. Now this last one is important. Where you can't fulfil all of the elements of the tender, be clear about it in your response and include strategies for meeting the requirements in the foreseeable future. So some people say, I'm not sure if I can really do this. Then just tell the story honestly and say, we are in the process of doing this, or in the next 3 months we're going to do this and X and Y and Z or whatever. So again, that's better than saying NA or something like that. Some do's and don'ts. So do, of course, use the templates and attachments provided, and only those provided in terms of your responses. Pay attention to the detail. Understand what is required to meet the tender deadline. And again, strategies, a couple of days beforehand, whatever. Read each of the questions carefully and thoroughly. Respond in full to all of the questions, ensuring each requirement is addressed in the box under that question. Provide evidence of relevant recent experience. So again, remember I talked about the STAR process, give proper examples that are meaningful. Differentiate your service offering to ensure competitiveness. We had a bit of discussion the other day because some of you are not-for-profit, probably most, and some of you are for-profit organisations. Now, regardless, of course, for funding, you will face some competition. If you're in the same area with the same service, will all of you get funding or one of you? And so what you need to highlight is, what do we do better than anyone else? What are our strengths? And in business, one of the things I always say is that it's never about denigrating the opposition. You know, you never say, by the way, don't give funding to that organisation, they're terrible, you know, people are awful. Because that's not what we do. What we do is we say, these are our strengths. You know, these are the reasons why we are successful and why, you know, we can do this for you, etc. Proofread your tender response prior to submission, and again, someone with fresh eyes to look at it. If you know someone even outside of your organisation, can you have a look at this? Have we done everything? Have we ticked all the boxes? Have we covered all of the information? Provide any extra information or documentation in the additional information question only that supports your submission. Again, we don't need copies of all of your policies and procedures. Only submit what you think is relevant that will support your case. The don'ts: don't write outside the boxes. Don't complete a tender submission using your documentation or formats. Don't provide irrelevant information that has not been requested. Don't provide your own budget spreadsheet. And don't assume Primary Health Tasmania knows all about you. They may well do, but remember the panel is made up of a number of different people. Always write your submission on the basis that they don't know who we are or what we've done, how long we've been here or whatever. So always look at it that way, then you're not tempted to shortcut. They know about us, we'll just do one line, right? So always keep an eye on that. So take that away with you and have a bit of a look. And of course you've got the PowerPoint as well. The questions, procedural, can be to Julia, but specific to tenders online. Any other questions? Well, thank you all very much for being here. I hope you're a bit more enlightened. Feel free to stay and have another coffee. If you have to go back to work, that's fine. But there's some nice apples and biggies. And feel free to have a bit of a chat. I'll be around if you want to have a bit of a chat to me as well. And so will Julia. So thank you. No worries. Thank you. Oh. Thank you.